So our final panel discussion will deep dive into the toolkits available to make the Philippines' energy transition or low carbon economy transition investable. To join me in this panel discussion, first off we will have Ms. Daniele Coronacion, who is the Executive Advisor, GHD Advisory. Danielle is a seasoned sustainability strategist and holds certifications as a Certified Sustainability Reporting Specialist by the National Center for Corporate Reporting and is a Certified Sustainability Practitioner by the Institute of Certified Sustainability Practitioners, Jakarta, Indonesia. She has served as a resource speaker for forums on sustainable financing and reporting standards for the Indonesia Global Compact Network Annual Series on the UNGC's SDG 16 Business Framework and Reporting Initiative. Joining us is Mr. Wally Santos, General Manager of Reprisk, Philippines. Dan Santos joined Reprisk in 2015 as an Operations Manager where he managed Reprisk's Manila-based research and data collection teams. In 2019, he became the General Manager of Reprisk Asia Pacific Hub here in Manila, overseeing its growth and overall operations. Prior to joining Reprisk, Dan was Vice President for Data and Product Management at Institutional Shareholder Services, a Maryland-based proxy advisory firm focused on corporate governance and responsible investment solutions, where he held various managerial positions within research, data operations, product management groups during his 13-year tenure. He holds a bachelor's degree in commerce, major in management of financial institutions, and master's degree in business management, both from De La Salle University in Manila, Philippines. Next up, we have Attorney Federico Tancongco, Senior Vice President and Chief Compliance Officer, Head of Compliance and Legal Department, BDO Unibank. Attorney Tancongco is he heads that department and also prior to that served as a trial lawyer and solicitor with the Office of the Solicitor General for 6 years before joining the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, where he was Trust Legal Counsel for the Trust and Investments Division for 12 years. He also serves as trustee in religious nonprofit corporations, namely World Teach Ministries Philippines, Far East Broadcasting Corporation. He holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy and letters from De La Salle University and a law degree from the University of the Philippines College of Law. We also have next Attorney Javey Di Francisco, Commissioner, Securities and Exchange Commission. Commissioner Francisco has been with the SEC for over 20 years, rising from the ranks, starting out as an SEC Securities Counsel in 2001, SEC Director in 2007, SEC Commissioner in 2018 to present. Last but not least, we have Joseph Worker, founder and CEO, Humble Sustainability. Joseph's early career began in sport and music, but his passion for creating real impact led to a shift to the startup world. Prior to building Humble, Joseph first moved to Southeast Asia in 2012, when he worked closely with global CEOs and government officials to promote investment into emerging markets. In 2017, he was appointed as Managing Director of Penn Brothers, and that led him to his impact work, this very, very present. Now, are we all sitting comfortably in that space? Can everybody from the back see us, and feel free to move forward to engage with our panel speakers if you see that there are vacant seats. All right, let's do this. You have a very interesting pair of shoes, Joseph, I must say.
Thank you, from Marikina, actually, of course.
Amazing.
Yes. Nicely made.
And if I may say so, mabuhay ang taga-Taytay for making me my Philippiniana dress. Maraming salamat sa mga local industries natin. All right, let's kick off this session by answering the question that we have been wanting to address this morning on making the Philippines transition investable. I'll kick off with the two advisory firms that we have here, GHD and Reprisk. First of all, Daniel, GHD's work includes transactional and technical advisory to ensure the soundness of investments in terms of ESG and hardware engineering criteria. Among your advisory work in power, ports, oil and gas, transportation, waste, and renewable deals, how are you engaging with the likes of Mr. Puno, for example, First Gen, which has natural gas investments, and in light of the Low Carbon Economy Investment Act.
Thank you very much, Ping, and thank you very much for inviting GHD to be part of this very pivotal forum with all our guests. In GHD, let me just briefly introduce our organization. GHD was established in 1928. We've been around here in the Philippines for 25 years, and we operate in 5 global markets of water, transport, energy and resources, environment, and also mining and resources. Now, when it comes to the work that we do, we focus on our technical expertise and also the business consultancy teams, as well as our engineers, our environmentalists, our scientists, and also our digital and technology enablement teams here in the Philippines and in the 5 continents in which we operate. For the low carbon economy and decarbonization strategies, we have been supporting various clients in all these markets. And for the past years, we have been seeing a very interesting uptake when it comes to availing low carbon technologies and also building capacity for decarbonization strategies. One of which I can share, you mentioned First Gen is one of our key clients, and one of those that I can mention when it comes to our strategies would be the market demands currently that we see. Market demands in ESG and sustainability here in the Philippines would be based on strategy and framework development. Carbon accounting is very strong, and I'm sure the other service providers would also agree this is very in demand as we are moving into a transition across all industries and sectors. We also have reporting and disclosure, of which the SEC, of course, is our anchor when it comes to the guidelines on sustainability reporting. With all the challenges that are happening with assets in our operations across various sectors, we see also the need for new technologies, low carbon technologies, for climate change resilience, adaptation, and mitigation. And aside from that, moving forward with all these regulations, the net zero in decarbonization road mapping. And these are the ways in which we support our clients and our partners, and in which we also promote the expertise of various organizations. We do not work in silo. We do not own all these knowledge. We work with our partners in the country and in the region for us to be able to actualize these strategies in organizations. And one of our projects recently, when it comes to the support for RE, for renewable energy, was with a 16 megawatt wind turbine power generation facility. And this wind turbine power generation facility had issues with a curtailment of the energy services that we were providing in Mindoro. GHD came in as a service provider for us to be able to assess what the underlying issues were, and eventually the categorization of these issues, what are the risks and opportunities, and this actually led to the installation of a 4 megawatt battery storage facility. And that is something that one of the examples of the work that we are very proud of.
I'm very, very heartened to hear that. Thank you so much for the work that you chose to do at GHD, and especially you, Daniel. I come to you, Dan. Perhaps not many among these our attendees know that Reprisk was actually one of the organizations behind exposing Volkswagen's emissions scandal in 2015, if you remember that scandal. So what signal does this give our corporates in terms of ESG disclosures, and how important it is in terms of investors making decisions?
Thank you, Ping, for that question. And again, I don't think we can take full credit for what happened with Volkswagen and again the fallout with that scandal, right? But what our data can provide is a historical behavior of organizations, and can be used as an early warning signal for business partners like vendors and suppliers, institutions such as regulators like the SEC, investors such as asset owners and asset management, and of course creditors like banks and financial institutions, right? In terms of making business decisions, right? In terms of, I think, I can align it to maybe greenwashing in a way wherein I think Philippine companies need to be understanding of what greenwashing is, and they need to assess, and they need to make sure that it's incorporated into their business decisioning process. It's very important now because just to be associated with greenwashing, even if you're not doing it, right? If one of your suppliers is greenwashing, or one of your vendors is greenwashing, you're already part of that. And I think there is a material, financial, impact to that, right? So again, I think Philippine companies need to be understanding of that. Again, so consumers are more demanding, right? And they really want people or companies and their products to be clean and green. But also there's the regulatory part. Governments are now being more, they're now establishing legal frameworks and accountabilities for environmental and human rights transgressions. It's starting in Europe, and it's only a matter of time before it lands of course, in the country or in the region.
Thank you so much, Dan. We'll deep dive some more on greenwashing, but isn't it amazing how the business landscape in the Philippines is already changing? We already have corporate police in the likes of Reprisk. We already have, we also have advisory in the likes of GHD that will help enable you to decarbonize. Now, I turn the time to Atty. Fetan. Thank you so much, sir. It's so good to see you again. And of course, Atty. Javey, thank you so much for coming over. So, how does banks like BDO Unibank and the Securities and Exchange Commission engage with the likes of GHD and SEC with the data that they provide? Atty. Fetan, specifically, does, for example, data from Reprisk reduce the borrowing ability of a certain company in terms of compliance risks or in terms of reputation risks?
Of course, we're very sensitive to any public disclosures of the behavior of the parties we deal with, third parties or even our suppliers. And that. But the story is better captured in that, we are have a fiduciary mindset about the impact we have. We are the biggest lender. We have about 3 trillion pesos in loan book alone. And so our lending will be across different industries. And so very careful because we cannot just on our own try to police that. Now, we are unique as a bank because the sustainability unit is under compliance, not because we just see it as a compliance issue, but because the compliance unit is the one in charge of corporate governance. And to us, we believe that sustainability is really driven from corporate governance. There's no way you can move without involving corporate governance. And a part of that, part of our journey is getting the right data and knowing if people are personally greenwash, they greenwash against us because they have to make disclosures. The lending has become more difficult, but the thing is, as we transition in our journey, it will transition everybody else we deal with because it has impacted us from front to middle to back. It has impacted, the board is driving all of this. But please understand, our journey began way back in 2010, before there was a Paris Agreement, before there were UN SDGs. We did not know what it was called then, but we were doing ESG way back in 2010. We started with environment and social markers to be able to lending and investing. And when it became clarified when the Paris Agreement came to the picture. So now, when a person borrows with us, there are two things. Not just that they are qualified, we have a stake in transitioning them because of the approach that we got, which is not just to drop the client, but transition the client. So we can use our influence and their need for money to transition. That makes it more difficult. We are not just looking into that they are going to report, but we want to see that this has impacted them front to back, operations, strategic, corporate governance. This is not a place for speed. This is a no speed zone. And we need, it also impacted the kind of capacity we need to have because we have to tell them what we are looking for. We have to look not just at the governance, is there an actual program? Is it for real? And they need to also upgrade their skills because the reporting is different. And we need to know whether the money we're lending them is really hitting what they promised us to hit, which means real time. We don't want to find out at the end of the loan period that they did not follow it, but it got misdirected. So that also requires equipping ourselves on the technical side so we can spot the patterns of people who are greenwashing us. We agree, we have to do it. So, and it's impacted even internal audit, even compliance, because we have to do our own promises to the public and our own promises to ourselves. Not all of our promises, see, what we do is we under-promise, we over-deliver. Okay? So, and what we do is, when we have made promises to ourselves for internal targets, it's subject to two kinds of independent testing, which is compliance independent testing, which is under my unit, and another internal audit. Now, the public does not know about this, but we need to be able to say that our integrity, what we say on the outside and what's happening on the inside, are one and the same.
Thank you so much, Attorney Vitan. He's just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. And you know, the BDO is very happy to engage. However, remember that it is a no-spin zone, right? And I turn to Attorney Javey. Coming from what Attorney Vitan just articulated, SEC receives sustainability reports, annual reports, integrated reports, and these are important on the surface. However, let's be frank, there are also companies that only do it to tick a box. You know, they only do it to tick a box. How do you engage with companies like this, Attorney Javey? Are they cutting themselves short by not being genuine in their reporting?
Thank you, Ping. Well, I guess sustainability reports really hit three stakeholders here. So it's first, of course, the companies themselves, the corporate issuers, because it sort of gives them they're able to assess where they are in their sustainability journey, and to manage and monitor their progress in the universal targets for sustainability. For the investors, of course, they'll be able to gauge as well whether these projects which are being, or products that are being sold are really sustainable. And just like you just said, we have to check about greenwashing and stuff. And for the regulator, that we are able also to guide. For SEC in particular, we see our place as not just a regulator, but really an enabler. So in fact, I think what helps also is that we try to walk the talk. Even in the SEC, our procurement, for example, also follows green procurement policies. In fact, just to give you an example, the President recently said that at least 20% of government vehicles should be HEV or EV, but by the end of the year, we will hit about 40% at SEC in our refleeting program. When we book hotels, for example, we make sure that they have a sustainability policy. Even small things like this. No? So we try, and so even in recently we just held our sustainability week, where all the departments, so sort of showcase their sustainability journeys. So these things help. And I think also for the thematic bonds, for example, from the issuer's point of view, they are able to monitor whether or not these bonds, how impactful they can be in managing their releases. No? For the investors, they are also able to monitor whether in fact these bonds are delivering the products which they, or the solutions which they said they would, based on the criteria post qualification, post audit rather. And also again for the regulator, that we are able to monitor and sort of guide all our stakeholders. So yeah, generally that's how we view it. So I hope it helps that we also try to walk the talk. It's not just a regulatory top-down approach, but we try to engage, no? And we see ourselves as an enabler rather than just a regulator.
Thank you so much, Attorney Javey Francisco, for that. Now, we have so far spoken with our two advisory firms, GHD and Reprisk. We've spoken to BDO, who is funding as long as you're not spinning ESG criteria for your project proposals. We've spoken as well to Commissioner Javey on sustainability reports being robust and not just for presentation purposes. Now, we have a case study in terms of humble sustainability, Joseph. Congratulations for being able to secure funding from the likes of NDC, ADB, and GoBeCore for your climate tech. So tell us, there could be some participants in our room who would like to learn about your journey. First, what did you do wrong? And then next, what did you do right?
Okay, how long have you got for what we did wrong? Okay, seriously, I'll try and keep it at 3 for now. Firstly, maybe I'll introduce what we do for those that don't know. So Humble Climate Tech Business, we help businesses bring their IT equipment back into circularity. So when a business needs to replace their laptops, their desktops, their monitors, we will refurbish that, wipe the data, recycle it, or resell it to somebody that will need it. And then we help them create, track, and achieve their ESG initiatives in line with that activity. So that's us. Now, I think one of the first things we did wrong was I believed at the start that I could raise investment based off of this vision and creating impact alone as the forefront. I'm extremely passionate about the impact that I wanted to create. And has anyone here seen We Crashed? The documentary about WeWork? Yeah? So here's a bit of an example, right? Adam Newman, back in the day, genius to some people, Muppet to other people. Controversial figure to me, just such a genius in his own right. And he really was able to raise billions and billions of dollars purely really based off of vision. And he ended up kind of believing his own vision in the end, which got him. Now those days are over. And now you need to have such substance to actually raise. So we did that wrong at the start and focusing really 90% on the impact we were creating climate-wise. And actually, the reality is, the sad reality is, that VCs, private investors, that's the last box to tick, is the impact. Even if they're an impact fund, quite often, it's, are they profitable? Is the market big enough? Is the team good? Are they showing quality growth? Yes, yes, yes. Then let's look at the impact box. So what we did right, I guess, in the end there was, let's then really deliver on gross revenue, net revenue, EBITDA, user growth, like really substance behind all of that vision. So that was mistake number 1. I think the second would have been taking no for an answer. So I know that there are some founders in the room that I spoke to earlier, and I'm sure resilience is a word that comes to mind. Now, for us, at the beginning, I would get turned down by many, many investors, and then I'd leave it there. Now that's not what to do, right? It's a little bit like dating to marry. I like this analogy because let's say you go on a few dates with someone and then you ask them to marry them. After 3 dates, your wife couldn't have married you, right? They say no. Of course they'll say no. Do you give up? No, you don't give up. You go again. Okay, let's move in. Let's get a dog. Okay, great. You ask them a second time. They say no again. Okay, I learn to cook better for my wife or my husband. Whatever it is, and eventually they'll say yes. And this was really the case for us. I'll give you one example. Asian Development Bank, which we're so proud of. I've been speaking to them for 3 years, and they said no twice. But I didn't stop, just kept with that relationship, and eventually we got that all-important yes. Final one I'll give you, the third, would be, again, a lot of the people in this room are climate experts. I could learn so much from a lot of you. I thought I would have to be an environmental expert scientist to be able to be successful in this industry that I'm so passionate about. I even had an element of imposter syndrome, I think. Hearing all this scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, I've got to know every single definition and GHG emissions and all of this, when actually that's not the reality. And I think if we set the bar like that, for someone to get into climate and try and innovate in climate, that they have to be an environmental expert, we're not going to get anywhere. And we do that. We shame almost. We kind of have this like look down approach in society of, oh, you're not a sustainability person, move aside. And that has to change. And so what I ended up learning and feeling was that I'm definitely not a climate expert. I'm just extremely passionate about it. My mother has been a climate activist ever since I can remember. And that's what I was surrounded by, and that's where my passions come from. But I didn't study it. But I surrounded myself with people who were smarter than me, which is everyone, and I could learn from, and had a lot of passion and drive, and that got us over the line in the end. So there, many more mistakes, but I'll save those for another time.
Thank you, Hello. Thank you, Joseph. You really live up to the name of your organization, Humble. Now, I come to you, Daniel. So we don't have, as a country, a net zero roadmap, but of course, I would be of the conviction that you believe that net zero is an imperative. How do you present the business case of net zero with clients that you engage at GHD?
With our conversations with clients, of course, we support the argument that there are no excuses anymore when it comes to transitioning and availing of net zero and climate finance facilities and mechanisms. Since there is support that is available to any type of organization at any level in their sustainability journey and whatever type of industry they're in or the composition of their teams from within and what products and services they are providing. We truly support the low carbon economy bill, and the role of GHD when it comes to that is just as the SEC and the BDO is to assist in creating an enabling environment for organizations to know what to do, where to start, and where to go. There is a need for us to create a baseline to know where we actually are before we even set targets for 10, 15, 20 years. And that is something that sometimes we are missing out. We want to set targets, we want to go net zero, we want to decarbonize. We use all these scientific jargon. However, we are not looking at where we are actually standing at present. And that is where we have to start. And that is the type of support that we are providing organizations. Where do we start? Where are we at? Where do we want to go? And how can we project our progress? And moving forward, how do we monitor? And how do we continuously progress from where we are?
Thank you so much, Daniel. Attorney Vitan?
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's stop. Our journey is not just our journey, it's also our client's journey. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. But I like what we tell our clients, just get started. Because in our case, we did not realize we were doing ESG. We had no name for it yet, but we already had a passion. I like you actually begin with passion, because there's nothing like passion. Every obstacle becomes the moment you face it. If we were Switzerland, when we tried to look, it's a mountain. But the moment you start facing the mountain, you learn new industries and just learn tunneling. And that's, I believe that we have to get the humility of just getting started. Okay? Humility. And at BDO, we are proud of our humility. What we're saying is that's really the key. Because there is space. I know we are part of an industry where we are very competitive. But in the sustainability space, this is a place where we hope everybody wins. Because here, there are no losers as we compete here. We compete by using our own examples. This is the way to do this. And that's why we are very aware of what we do. Because if we can, we issued the first 4 bonds in sustainability, and we've really gotten a lot of good results from our very in the last 2 years we've issued about 3, and the first blue 4. The very first one we said we test 5 billion. We ended up this time way beyond 50 billion and 60 billion. We just issued one recently, and people get angry because the offer period is so short. We got oversubscribed every time. We know that the country is already ready for this kind of financial instruments. But there are still, we need to know that we have our baseline correct. Because if you get that wrong, your journey will be a whole lot slower. There's a whole lot more friction. So I thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Attorney Vitan. I have my eye on the time, so I hope that we could reserve your questions for our esteemed panelists during the networking cocktails, so that we could just wrap up the session with one more round of questions for them. If I may beg your indulgence, Thank you very much. Dan, knowing that we have the Low Carbon Economy Investment Act, what is your advice to banks and financial institutions on managing transitional risks of this new regulation?
That's a very loaded question, Ping. Thank you for that. But I think in terms of transition risks, I think everybody is thinking about it. All organizations are thinking about it, especially the creditors, right? But I think there's no single solution for transition risks. Every organization's journey towards addressing their transition risk is unique. In terms of the Bangko Sentral memorandum, right? I think that highlights the need for incorporating emerging and material risks. And I think these risks are important, and they even provide best practices in terms of how banks and financial institutions can incorporate these new emerging risks into their day-to-day operations. I think that's great, especially for our local banks and financial institutions, because we are setting them to a higher standard, right? Now, in terms of our journey towards the low carbon economy, it's there is no magic wand that will change high emissions business into a low emissions business overnight. That takes technology and hopefully government intervention to support it. But I think, I heard Daniela mention it earlier, that we all have a hand to play in this journey, because as consumers, we can support these companies who move our green journey forward. Support the banks who support these green financing initiatives. And again, I think we all have a part to play here. We can't just let the regulators handle it, or the government agencies handle it, or the corporations handle it. All consumers have a role to play.
Thank you so much, Dan. Attorney Petan, as to BDO's 2033 goal to halve its exposure by then, you mentioned that you would rather engage with companies that are still fossil fuel companies instead of dropping them from your portfolio. How exactly are you doing that?
See, we engage our clients, of course, trying to help them. A huge part of this is educating them what is this about. This is really about survival. Okay, we call it, it's the word sustainable is not as biting as I say. This is really about survival. If you do not adjust now, it will cost a whole lot to adjust in the future. The laws are changing, the requirements of banks are changing. If you don't adjust now, tomorrow you die. Okay? But then to have that discussion, we also can, one of the realization is when we study the issue at our board level is, this is not about only our clients. We are moving an ecosystem. So when you want a client transition and transfers its industry, it will impact the community where they have their factories. It will impact the kind of jobs that are available. Some of the jobs will become obsolete. So we have to think of communities. And the communities will have different requirements. And the impact of climate change on them will not be the same. That's why we have about, our footprint is, we have branches in about 95% of the municipalities in the Philippines. The issues are different, place to place. Okay? Our issue also is different because we are an archipelago. We are not one island. The issue of distributing energy is going to be more expensive than generating the energy. Okay? But then, why the transition? We transition the client by making sure that even if they leave us as the source of funds, they continue on their own journey. Okay? And then also, we look at the community. Maybe some of them have to abandon this, and maybe they will start, maybe become an MSME, or even if you're not our client, we have to think of products to be able to capture that. Because you transition an economy. Second, some of them, for example, in navigation, their engineering revolved around diesel. Now, they have to change. So you impact at all levels, and you have to move at all levels so that it's credible. Okay? Yeah. And you transition an entire ecosystem, sector by sector, and the journey will not be the same. And that is actually in the Paris Agreement, that's clear. There is a different target for OECD and for us developed. Our journey will not be the same.
Thank you so much, Attorney Fentan. Very passionate right there. Short and sweet, perhaps, Attorney Javey and also Joseph. For Attorney Javey at SEC, it is pivoting towards engaging with MSMEs as well. What do you see is the value to the Philippine economy of ESG criteria being applied to MSMEs? And to Joseph, what's your hope for the Philippines as we enter a new nexus for energy and nature? Attorney Javey first, please.
Yes, thank you. So yes, of course, again, just like the other speaker said earlier, it's very important to inculcate a change in mindset for well, right now it's our the sustainability reporting guidelines applying only to PLCs, but the intention really is to push this to all MSMEs. After all, MSMEs comprise about 99% of all businesses. So at the SEC, for example, we launched this year a Smileys campaign. It stands for Small, Medium Industries and Large Enterprises Embracing Sustainability. So the push is to educate MSMEs in the countryside, engaging with them, getting feedback from them, at the same time providing them opportunity to gain technical skills, to chart their own sustainability journeys. So we have had one in Cebu recently, in Davao, and then we're having another one next month in Baguio. So generally it's a proactive stance, and then basically what we're saying really is that this is a shared journey. I mean, we have a shared humanity. It's not even about just the planet. I mean, it's about my responsibility to you and to you, to our children. Maybe if you frame it that way, that it's, again, as Atty. Tancongco said, it's about survival. No? It's something that we can just push aside, and it's not a matter of choice. And now, at least now, we still have some choices to make. And we are still able to do those choices. We might as well do them now. So that's how we're approaching it, through education. And I think the SEC is in a unique position in the ASEAN because the Philippine SEC is both handles the corporate registration side and the securities regulation. So we're able to do that under one roof. Unlike in other jurisdictions, they have separate authorities. So it's good that everyone, each one of us, have our own sustainability practices, sustainability programs, and I guess at the end of the day, we like in instances like this where we can collaborate and in common enterprises, we should do so.
Thank you so much. And I give the final hour and final shot to you, Joseph.
Did you say hour?
Sorry.
Get ready, folks.
For networking, if you would like.
Okay, so the question was, what is my hope for the Philippines? Wow, that's a real Miss Universe kind of answer. World peace? No. So I think in a nutshell, to summarize it, it would be a team effort, right? Every single corner. So want to see more startups, and that's kind of my world. So more founders looking at how can we build impactful businesses. Again, anyone here who's in that realm, like I'm extremely proud of what you're doing, because you could have chosen to build something which might have made a little bit more money for yourselves. But there is an amazing amount of profit to also be made in impact if you can build the right model. That's extremely important. So that's tech startups, and then governments. We heard from Sir Marcel earlier, who was talking about a catalyst funds. When he talks about NDC, the National Development Corporation, they've essentially done a version of that for tech startups, where they will back local VCs who want to invest in companies. We need something bigger, as he was saying, for climate specifically, for sure. And then corporations to please be more willing to keep working with the likes of us small guys, right? Trying to make as much impact as possible and continue on those sustainability roadmaps. But overall, really a team effort here.
Thank you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our esteemed panel speakers, Daniel, Dan, Attorney